Okay, good.
Good morning again. This is part 2 of the interview, and this round is the moms in charge of the kids. So we're going to start with Debbie. Would you please tell us your kids' ages?
Craig is 24, Andrew 21, and Matthew 19.
Margaret, your turn.
Okay, Michael 29, Christine 27, Andrea 25, Eric 20. This isn't up now. I know he's 22. Okay. Leah's 17, Peter's 14, and Emily is 12.
All right, Cheryl.
Christopher's 19, Jason's 14, Reagan is 10, Brady is 9, Logan is 5, and Isaac's 3.
Okay, Debbie, back to you. What are your teacher qualifications for feeling yourself ready to do this?
I do have some college. Most of it was learn as you go.
Okay. Margaret?
I don't have any teacher qualifications. I do have an engineering degree, so.
Learn as you go?
Learn as you go, yeah.
Cheryl?
Same thing, I have a programming degree, and teacher manuals, yeah, they're key.
Okay. All right. Don't feel like you've got to go individual, but just do this as a conversation. So between the three of you, what would you say is the basic philosophy of homeschooling? Why are you doing this?
Well, maybe where I started out and where I am now might be a little bit different place. I just think it's really kind of efficient because the kids have to put in less hours of sitting at their desks, and they can help with the housework, and have put in 30 hours in a part-time job during their high school years, and I like the family being not separated into age or grade categories, more of a smaller unit.
Okay.
I like the unit aspect of it.
The what?
The unit aspect of it, that you're actually working as a family on different things, and everybody can get involved. We did unit studies, so it fit right in. So the things we were doing in the places we were going even coincided with what we were learning. So their life experiences also gelled with what they were learning academically.
So instead of doing 3rd grade social studies and 5th grade social studies and 7th grade social studies and having 3 separate lessons going at the same time, you did a unit of Civil War, and they
Yes.
all did the same thing at their level.
At their level, yes.
Okay. Cheryl, anything you want to
I
add?
would ditto what they said, but the one thing I really like is I can gear it to the kids. I've got one that I actually had to change math curriculum midstream this year. And I have that freedom. If they're at school, they're at the mercy of, someone else's. And so I can gear based on my kids' learning abilities.
Okay.
And where they're at.
Was there any particular one reason that made you decide that normal mainstream schooling was not the direction you wanted to go, or was it just kind of a thought that evolved as your kids got older, or as you became a parent?
My son begged me.
Okay.
One of his friends was already doing it. He said, "Mom, 1 year, can we try it, please? Can we try it?" And he's now a sophomore in college, so we never
Okay.
went back.
I didn't have anything negative happen that made me want to start homeschooling. I just thought it'd be a positive thing because we had a large family, and it seemed like a way to unify things, and we couldn't be divided like someone with a smaller family where, I'll take so-and-so to baseball, you take so-and-so to something else. We had to do more things together, and so it seemed simpler for that. And spiritually, I just liked homeschooling families. It seems like the parents took their faith seriously and wanted to impart it on the kids above other things, and I wanted my kids in that atmosphere.
Okay.
I think of mine, we started Craig when he started school. He was diagnosed ADHD and LD very young. And after a preschool experience, we figured we were going to spend more time in the principal's office than we were in the classroom. So we decided mainly on that. And I like the spiritual aspects too. we could, especially work with him. He was probably my biggest challenge child because he was very headstrong. So you could kind of work with his reasoning skills and stuff a little bit better in a homeschool setting.
Okay, anything else to add? All right, one of the topics that came up in my project is what's the difference between homeschooling and unschooling or deschooling? And have you run into both terms, and do you follow either term exclusively, or do you kind of gel them?
Well, I'm not organized enough to unschool because I think to do that properly, the idea behind it is you have your child's interests lead their studies, but somehow by the time they're done with high school, you have to have it all, written down in a transcript that, this is what we did for quote-unquote science or something this year, and people can do that very well just by gearing everything towards if their child's interested in bugs or something like that. But then you have to still fill in with, you have to get the math somehow, and I don't know how they do that. So, a lot of curriculum choices have to be made based on the way the child learns best, but also the way the mom teaches best. And I just don't think I could have done it. I would have let them goof off too much. I think I would have been more structure.
I've never heard the term deschooling, I've heard the term unschooling, and, yeah, I mean, I exactly, I need the schedule, the routine, in the summer we could do, well, what do you wanna learn about? Let's go to the zoo and study the snakes today, But during the school year, I feel like I need a routine, and I need the textbooks and the help, and, yeah.
And also, since they are in school less time during the day, if the TV's off during the rest of the day, they do find time for their own interests in drawing or reading or building or whatever, then I figure that's what worked for me.
The child-led part of the
Yeah,
day.
that's the child-led part of the day, as long as the TV's off, which is harder and harder to do.
Yeah.
Going back to your comment about changing math curriculums with your son, how much influence do your kids have on which curriculum you choose? Or do they have an influence?
Well, for me, it has varied by year. I mean, obviously, their educational abilities and so forth, that influences my decision, but it seems like the older they get, a little bit more say I give them. We have a great homeschool expo in the spring each year, and one evening is free, and I take the kids and say, all right, you look around, you tell me what you like, what you think you can work with, especially when they've struggled with a certain curriculum. And so all of them had a lot to say this year, and there were two we had to change. So the math and then my kindergartner reading, the program was way advanced for where he was, so we had to backtrack.
For me, they had a lot of choice. I had 3 boys, so the choice in curriculum was based upon what would work for boys. Obviously, I did not read Little House on the Prairie. We were reading Around the World in 80 Days and stuff like that. So we went with Konos, which allowed them to do everything from dissect eyeballs to build an ear out of my table. So, and that worked well with the boys. We did more unit study, so we geared it towards what they would find would work with the male mentality kind of thing. And so, yeah, they had quite a bit, as they got older, they had quite a bit of influence in what I chose.
Okay, going with your reading book example, when you are working through a social studies or a science or even a literature curriculum, do you have choices where it would say for, say social studies, for the American Westward Expansion period, read one of these books and then they give you a list of 10 choices, or is it something about read Little House on the Prairie?
There's variety, because some of them will say, here's a bunch of books, pick from among them for your different ages of kids. Other ones are, like, here's the boy list, here's the girl list, for younger grades. And then I like the most direction I can get, so when I would do unit independent studies, I used another program that had the reading laid out there. This is the book that you read aloud to your kids. This is the book that the kids read for the different age levels. But I wouldn't make a boy read. I might make them read Farmer Boy, but I'm not going to make them read.
Yeah.
It's one of the others. So, yeah, or Little Britches instead of Little House on the Prairie or something.
That was
like
a good
that.
one. So, but again, did your kids choose the book or did you choose the book for them? When they have a list of 10 choices?
I would choose.
Okay.
It just goes faster.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
And a lot of it depends on the curriculum too. And if you use, there's some that are just like a standard textbook and you read through the lesson and that's it, and it doesn't give you
Okay.
suggested additional readings.
Right. And
So it
kids
really
like
depends.
Just the textbook approach.
Yeah.
I was like a little of both, because I did do across the board, everyone did the same curriculum too. And sometimes the age wouldn't even fall within the curriculum, like the curriculum would gear toward 3rd through 6th grade, and I have an 8th grader, so I just picked something myself that was a little harder.
Okay, well that takes us then into the next set of questions. You have mentioned spiritual growth and family and social growth and academic growth. What are some of the positive things that you have seen in those 3 areas? And feel free to add in a 4th area if something jumps out at you.
Social growth, I find my kids could integrate intergenerationally. They were not intimidated by adults at all. Sometimes that was not always a good thing, but they could hang either direction and it didn't seem to bother them. There was no gap in communication there. They were comfortable being in both with kids and with adults.
And I view, when we have a choir, there's a church locally where there's a choir, and there's a grassy area behind the church, so the siblings will play in the grassy area. You have a high school senior playing football with a 3-year-old, and he'll pick up the 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old's got the football, and he'll run and make a touchdown. And it's just, it's just so cool to see that age, and they can all play together, and then talking to the adults. Yeah, my college student, 5th, 6th grade, was holding conversations with adults that even I couldn't hold some days. So.
My kids are all pretty introverted and quiet, so part of the reason I wanted to homeschool too was I didn't want them being told that I was told in school that, oh, she's so shy, oh, she's so shy. So I thought, rather than have them thinking bad about themselves, just put them in a lot of situations where they are with older people and families and other people's grandparents, and more life would be more like hanging out with the cousins that you don't know so well, rather than the intimidating peer scene, maybe.
Well, that actually brings me then kind of leading into the next set of questions, especially when the homeschool movement was less well known 20 years ago when you guys were starting. When you heard somebody say, I'm homeschooling, there were a lot of negatives. Oh, how will they get socialized, and all of those. Have you seen problems with that?
Problems being socialized? We still hear those questions, by the way.
I was gonna say.
How are you gonna get into
Hopefully
college?
not as often.
Yeah, not as often. I think a lot of those victories with just homeschool kids being more out there, more numbers, it's helped. I don't know, because I had so many kids, the younger 2 are definitely lonelier at home. The older ones were never lonely. There's always stuff going on, there's always people. So I'm finding myself thinking, I have to take them somewhere. And so that's not something I've done with, but socially they're lonelier.
Well, you're not quite on that end
I was
yet.
gonna say, yeah, mine, we're always running scouts or heritage girls or choir or band or, there's just so many things. And then we of course do the youth and stuff at church, and so they've got church friends and they've got homeschool friends, and then they've got kids that go to public schools that they're friends with, neighbors, and so yeah,
They're really not lacking for social
No,
interaction.
no.
Well, let me ask you this then. Sticking on that socialization topic, 20 years ago we tended to think of the homeschool family as very isolated and within their own 4 walls. Do you feel like you're running as much as any other mainstream school family?
Yes.
Is it because you are taking them to specific activities or just the way life is?
A little of both, a little of both.
Do you feel that you are losing some of the, these are my four walls of the home?
To some degree. I mean, I try to stay focused and generally, you know, try not to schedule anything in the mornings. The mornings are kind of ours, except Thursday morning one of them has band, but, you know, so when we schedule doctor's appointments or orthodontist appointments or, you know, most of the activities are afternoon geared so that we can get up, we can have our breakfast, and we can focus on our schoolwork, and then we can be done and off to choir, off to band. You know, now you have free time. So, yeah.
Since your kids are a little bit older and you're technically out of this, how much running did you do during the day?
Not as much.
Do you think that was because it was 10 years ago and we were just 10 years less busy?
I
Less
think
social?
part of it was, and I think part of it was the boys. Andrew was not my big social kid. Him and Matt were only 21 months apart, so they were each other's social entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Craig was in Scouts, but we also limited the activities, my husband and I, because we didn't want the running here and there when they were younger. We really kind of wanted to keep them a little more together. And so the activities we chose were stuff, A, that they could do together, or B, we would just do them as a family and not, so we kind of limited how many activities, because you can't get to where the activities dictate everything you do.
Is that true? Well, and do you think some of this is 3 children versus 6 and 7 children?
Yes.
To some degree.
Because
Yeah.
even each child in one activity still means you're running to 6
Right.
activities.
But she mentioned Craig was in Scouts, well, Christopher was in Scouts, so all my boys are in Scouting, because they don't want to do it if their older one did it, and then Reagan does the American Heritage Girls, so they all have their own Scouting program, and it's all in different ones at this point.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't do super amount of stuff just because I always wanna make sure I was still home for the baby to have a nap or whatever, until some were older and I could babysit, but I didn't do a whole lot outside the house when they were.
Well, I think that was part of ours too, because Craig was 5 years old when Matt came along. So it was, by the time I got the younger two through, we weren't doing that much because you had to interfere with the nap times and all that kind of stuff.
Getting dinner on the table and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Mm-hmm. Are there any cons that you have seen in homeschooling, academically, socially, spiritually?
Yes. Motivating kids is, if the kid is not self-motivated, it's hard to motivate to do school. If some might be motivated by sitting in the classroom, seeing all their kids work, their friends working out, they might work. Or if they are disappointed to not get an A, they might work. But at home, your power is somewhat limited. No
Well, and
pressure.
actually that brings up another point. Do you find it difficult to switch roles between mom and teacher?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they have a
I feel
hard
the
time.
same thing with this. I feel like it's just after a while, it's the same role.
Yeah.
Your mom makes you make your bed, your mom makes you do your math lesson. Your mom makes you do this, your mom makes you all day long.
Yeah. And they have a hard time
Yeah.
telling the difference.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing, mom's telling me to make my bed, mom's telling me to brush my teeth, mom's telling me to do my math. So, yeah, I think.
Okay, and then that brings up another concern from 20 years ago. Do you feel that your kids have respect for other authority figures? Or does it all center around mom or dad?
I think generally so. I mean, every kid has their moments and has their issues. But generally, I mean, that's one of the things that we stress in our household is that you respect elders. And it could be just an older teenager. You know, you're 10 and there's a 14-year-old that is in charge for whatever reason. You need to respect whoever's in authority. You know, be it your sibling who's babysitting or, you know, another parent at church or another choir director, any of those. We stress that.
So it's more the family values that come through
Yeah.
in something like that.
Yeah, cause I would do that if they were at school, that would be the same
Yeah.
thing, I would be
Yeah, it's a-
training them.
Okay. Any other negatives that you have seen over the years?
I think sometimes, depending on the child, my youngest probably has the most trouble with this, it was time management
Okay.
in that, because he knew he had, especially as he got older, you had all day to get it done. And,
Yeah.
All week.
So why not spread it out?
Yeah, he's my procrastinator, so he would, yeah, that's been, college has been a good thing for him to getting back on track with that, is the time management. I can't wait till 10 o'clock at night to get all the homework done, and the class is at 8 AM, so, but, yeah.
That's not limited to homeschoolers, so.
No.
And I found that, I was warned about this, that 14, 15-year-old boys have a hard time because there's not, with their free time, there are not things necessarily they want to do around the house. They might want to go hunting or go play baseball or work do a woodworking project with their dad, but basically, you're home with your mom. And so, that's a real time of boredom for my sons. The daughters, man, they could just play with their brothers and sisters, or they'd cook, or they bake, or they make a book, or, something. But the boys had a much harder time at that age. Then once they got into more stuff and could drive and have classes at the community college or something, and a job, then they were okay. But those were rough, and that's a rough, no matter what, 2 years of a boy's life.
So does that boil back down to the time management skills again?
That all goes in, yeah. If they're not that responsible and they're not as mature as their 14 or 15-year-old sister, it just all rolls in together.
We saw some of that too, but I'm blessed I have my husband's parents and mine 10 minutes from where we live. So when we got into that, Grandpa was a great asset, because he was home, they were both retired, so they got put in charge of, my dad has a full acre. At the time the boys were growing up, Mike's parents had 3 acres, and so they were out there in the afternoons mowing grass, cutting wood, things that were physical, and Grandpa was a really good person to have
really
around.
nice,
Yeah.
Or if you have a dad that's got a home business that you can
Yeah.
roll him into or something.
Because that male influence in those teen years is, man, because, mom becomes, is mom. Kind of thing. You know, you're kind of the fixture.
All right. Actually, you brought this up a bit. What kind of extended family support have you encountered or not encountered? You said Grandma and Grandpa have been wonderful.
Yeah. They initially weren't real thrilled with the idea, because it was something new, both sets of parents. But as they, as we got older and they seen the benefits, that, the kids were learning stuff, and that made a difference. And we tried to make them a part of it too. That when we would learn history and things, I remember us doing inventors and sitting down and having my boys talk to Mike's parents and mine, what were things that they remembered, because they came out of the 50s, that they remembered. And it was really exciting for the boys to be able to hear my mother-in-law talk about, she remembered the first time she heard an airplane go over. She comes from southern Missouri and grew up without electricity or running water. So she didn't have those things until she became an adult. And so those kind of things, and realizing the difference, that they were really just 2 generations removed from a very different lifestyle than they had. So that's been a really big blessing.
My parents were not crazy about it. My husband's parents, my husband's father, thought it was a really good idea. But we just started doing having them do the standardized testing at a local Christian school every year, so that they could see that they were making progress, and then put their mind at ease at least about that issue. They are still worried about the social things, but I think they kind of got over it after 10 years or so. They never complained. They're not complaining, but I know they thought it was weird.
Okay.
I had a different experience when I was pregnant with Christopher. My mom said, "Oh, you need to homeschool." And then here's an article my friend gave me. And I went, no. Yeah, you're crazy, I don't have the patience for that, no, yeah, put it away. And, so when I told her I was gonna homeschool, she said, well, it's about time. So, but now my in-laws were not thrilled with the idea, and they would, kind of raise me. They're not too bad, we don't see it much, but just in the last time we went down there, he said, we've got a guy down here that has homeschool curriculum that he writes, and he's got to know that guy. And all of a sudden, homeschooling's okay. He's watched his kids learn, his grandkids grow and learn, but until he met someone else, now it's an acceptable form of education.
I see.
Right.
And my dad wasn't involved in our lives when we were making the decision, but so by the time he came on board, we were already homeschooling, and he was seeing that, they're not in a shell, they can read, they can write, and so they just kind of think, well, it's interesting and kind of cool, and the kids, like you, love to share what they've learned. We made a mummy, we wrapped each of us up in toilet paper, they just think that was so fun. So
I think one of the biggest oppositions I ran across was in my home church. And that at the time when we started, Dolores and I were the only two that homeschooled in the church that I knew about. And then Margaret jumped on board not long after, and the Harts did, I think, about the same time.
Do you think it was difficult because Zion supports a school?
I think so.
Yeah.
I
It was threatening.
definitely, it was
It
threatening.
was like, we have this really good option, why is it not
Right.
right for you?
well, we started in that option and came out of that option, and so we had a lot of negative reaction from the church.
Which brings up the financial too. If you want a Christian education for your kids, and you have a lot of kids, and you're a stay-at-home mom, you cannot afford that option.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very expensive. For me with it, I was a graduate of Zion, so that was a question, you went through it, why wouldn't you send your children? So I had some tough questions to answer on that end.
And is this one of these where you're never going to come up with the right answer from the right people?
No, you're not. You just basically nod your head and be polite and move on.
Okay. Well, moving on to the community then, in the past 11 to 20 years, how has the community's viewpoints changed on homeschooling?
Everybody knows someone who homeschools now. Oh, my cousin homeschools her kids, or my sister-in-law, or whatever, so, it's much more accepted. You're not fearful letting your kids play in the backyard, someone's gonna call the truant officer to the front door, or, all those things, those fears are gone.
What about, what services does the community offer now to help you?
You mean within our community, or like the government?
Let's do community first, because I know Bush Wildlife does their homeschool themed programs, Great Skate has done homeschool afternoons, that kind of stuff. What kind of?
Flex does.
The
Bowling alley.
The history museum.
The YMCA, I think, still does.
Magic House has homeschool days, and pretty much any attraction, I guess you would say.
That's doing nothing during the day, would rather have
Open to
homeschoolers
theirs.
come and
I
make
think
out.
the Botanical
Right.
Garden now has one.
And we participate in the Pizza Hut Reading Club and the Six Flags Reading Club and Raging Rivers. I mean,
All
all
the stuff
those
that
are
the
open
regular
to
schools
us
do,
as
yeah.
well, yeah. And within our community, and we're not the only one, there's a great St. Charles Christian Home Educators Group. That's where our choir and band and drama and learning center and, I mean, you name it, it's available to us,
Yeah, it's great support.
And so if you just have a question, I know I could call Margaret and go, when you got to high school, did you experience? So, we just have a great support system on each other, which goes awesome.
There are the academic things, so you can go and take a class one afternoon a week, and then do the other 4 days at home, and then come back the next week and get that teacher to answer your questions for high school kids. So that's a really good idea if your mom isn't confident in her.
Another area is the community college will allow homeschoolers to start at age 16.
And Lindenwood
And,
Missouri Baptist and Mary.
Yeah,
They're a lot of the colleges.
Yeah, I think the community college kind of started the ball rolling, and the other colleges have kind of come on board and seen that we're not from Mars or anything.
Okay, hold on to that comment for a minute. Margaret, one of your kids or two of your kids went to Francis Howell.
Oh, yeah.
How did that work out? How
I think
difficult
that's
was
great,
that?
Because it wasn't hard at all, and the school was very willing, because they get income for as many hours as you're willing to put your child in school there. They they benefit financially as well. So, yeah, I even had my daughter take the bus, and then we went and picked her up 2 hours later, or 2.5, whatever, when the classes were done, and she really enjoyed doing it, and I would do that again with another child if they wanted that.
Did she feel prepared coming out of a homeschool curriculum and jumping into the public school curriculum, which had been feeding that for 10 years, first grade on up?
Yeah, she did communications and chemistry, and pre-calculus. So she was ready academically. Some things were strange to her, just strange. So she had to get used to, I can't think of what some things were. Well, like, getting everybody's attention, or how they did experiments were not 3 or 4 siblings around the kitchen table. It was a demonstration more, and with a teacher doing it in front of the class, or a video or something like that. And there was seeing the conflict, seeing the bad behavior on the bus, all those kinds of things were good for her to see, and I guess she dealt with it fine.
Okay, Debbie, going back to your comment about the community college, same question. How did your boys feel prepared-wise coming from the curriculum, the background that they had, jumping into a community college curriculum?
Each one of them was really different. Craig didn't adjust completely well, and we think he was the only one we did right at 16. He was my math and science, and he had gotten beyond my abilities. Those are not my subjects. And he did fine with the academic part. He just found a lot of the number of students and all that very distracting. But that comes back to being ADHD too. They tend to find large numbers of people distracting. He has since, at 24, adjusted to that. Andrew didn't like, because he is my hands-on student. For him, having somebody lecture at him for an hour and a half was just, his ears were bleeding by the time it was over. He was not thrilled with that. That was not something he enjoyed. But he is now ready to go back and try it again. Matt loves it. He adjusted, but he's kind of my flexible child. And so for him, it works right in. He's the audio learner, and so that fit right in. He adjusted. He started at 16 as well. Actually, he was almost 17, so he's a little bit older than Craig. And he adjusted the best and is now a full-time student there. So
Christopher took one class. He took advanced physics, maybe? No, advanced chemistry at the community college. And he felt prepared, but the science curriculum I was using is a great homeschool curriculum, but it's almost like a college textbook, except it reads conversationally.
yeah.
So it's great to learn, okay, this is what a college textbook is like, but I can understand what they're saying. So he was fine with that. Now, when he went to college, he had some struggles because, he had always aced everything, and all of a sudden I have to do the homework to actually pass the test. Yeah, you do.
That was an adjustment for Craig too, because we kind of took the hands-off approach and kind of let him succeed or fail on his own. And it was a good experience for him to find out that, okay, the real world is not going to cater to me anymore. Mom and Dad are going to cater to me. And it was good for him to see that, yeah, there were limitations and expectations for him as well.
Since you have younger ones, do your younger kids do a class with any group someplace outside of your house?
No. We did, on the anniversary of Lewis and Clark, the whole family, I think you did that, you did that too, didn't you?
Yeah,
we did a whole community unit study on Lewis and Clark, and we had a day where we did cooking, and I led a craft, and we made beeswax candles and moccasins, and that's the younger ones, other than their choir and band, once you hit, and they're all age. Choir's at 8 and band is 5th grade. They don't do any classes with anybody else that's with me. Now, we do history across the board, and obviously, you expect different things at the different ages, but I do history from kindergarten all the way up.
Yeah, certain
My
subjects you
high
can do that. I could do it with, history.
Science to some degree.
Science, you can, up until you get into high school age, then it gets a little more complicated. And, literature, we could do. But some of when we had Craig even in early high school, I would sit and read to them, and the younger ones, yeah,
Just listen as much
just
with a
listen,
sponge.
just so they, other than that, you'd be doing school from dawn till dusk.
Right.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Actually, going back and kind of, I missed it earlier, but talking about kids choosing. I do science with Brady and Reagan together because they're 2 years apart, 18 months apart. And I actually let them pick. I said, all right, here's our science options. You can do astronomy, birds or animals of the air, animals of the sea, animals of the land, or anatomy. And they chose astronomy. So, next year they can choose a different one, but yeah.
And it's cool too, I don't know, with yours, probably you more than, is that as they get older, they'll come back to, certain things. Well, we learned this, can we do this again? And then you just expand upon it as they get older.
Which is what you do in the classroom as well, because you repeat certain things
Yeah.
year after year. That's the way it gets into long-term memory, so.
Yeah.
All right, one last question on the community, and Margaret, you kind of started talking on this one. What changes, both good and bad, have you seen through the state of Missouri?
We have a very homeschool-friendly state as far as our requirements, just to log to have lesson plans and log 1,000 hours worth of instruction in a year. And pretty much, that's all I have to do, isn't it?
Do you submit it?
No.
Okay.
If anyone should if you should get taken to court, you have to produce it.
Okay.
That's all. So that's really nice. And
How long did your kids, or are they still doing the standardized testing, checking every year?
yes, I've gotten to, I do it only every other year. But, yeah, I mean, once they do the high school, then they start taking the ACT
Okay.
every single year. We just signed up to take it for the 8th time. So, yeah.
Debbie, did you do any kind of standardized checklist?
Yeah, we did, all three boys did some of the standardized testing, and then we did the ACT, SAT, except with Andrew, we did not go that route, mainly because he is my most learning disabled. So the time restriction would have been very frustrating for him. So we did a lot of stuff at home, which was the pre, and see where it kind of logged him on his own.
Okay. Have you done anything like that?
Other than Christopher taking the ACT.
And did he start early or just for college entrance exams?
For college, he took it senior year, and I said, all right, you're set for this date, so you need to study. He didn't study a wink. He came out with a 28, and I said, I'm so jealous of you. I would have scored a 1. But then he took it again, and he crammed for 2 weeks and did everything he could do, came out with a 29, so I guess that's just your level, and it's a good level.
That's a good level.
Yeah, I want my kids to be sitting in a classroom with a bunch of other kids around for a test too, because my kids are introverted, and I was afraid that would be really distracting and intimidating. They'd feel like everybody was staring at them or something, so that's partly the reason why I did that, so they'd be used to at least that from a classroom setting.
Okay, and then last question. We've got a lot of years of experience here. You're basically done, and you're on the tail end, and you have a long way to go still. Well, you got a 3-year-old, you know.
Yeah.
What do you see happening to homeschooling in the next 5, 10, 15 years? You're going to be in this?
I see it growing. I mean, every day I have people calling me, you homeschool now, how do I get started? I don't have any idea how to get started. And so I think it's growing.
Why are people calling you? Are they looking for
Different
options?
reasons,
Are they
yeah.
upset with things? Or
Some are disappointed, they don't like the way particularly the public schools are going.
okay.
Some just, they want that family unit back. They feel like they're so divided. The kids are at school all day, and then soccer and baseball and scouts and this and that. You know, so at least we're at home. Okay, you're a unit for part of the day. You may disperse later, but, you know, I think they've seen it grow, so that fear is not there. Like I had the fear, when my son was born, I can't do that, and by the time I had started doing it, I knew Debbie and Dolores and Margaret, and wow, and their kids are succeeding. But they have patience. I still don't have patience. So, I just see it growing because everybody knows, like you said, everybody knows somebody. My neighbor, my neighbor's cousin, my relatives. So yes,
It's definitely not as religious-based as it used to be. There's all kinds of people now, and most of the calls that I get are people that it's not working out. School is not working out for whatever reason. Their child's in a class that doesn't have good friends, or their child isn't working, or their child has ADHD or something. And so now homeschooling is more, not such a weirdo option, it's more of it's an alternative now. So I think unless they come up with a voucher system for schools, I think that people will choose it more and more and more.
As more and more people are looking into it, do you think that the moms and dads who are looking into it are qualified to do it? Because that tends to be a concern from the educational community is, I went to school for 4 years, I'm in a specific subject, especially at the high school level, what makes you qualified to teach chemistry or algebra or literature or whatever if you're just a mom?
Yeah, well, fact is, we're not qualified for a lot of those things, but the curriculum is so homeschool friendly now. Like if you have a dad who's a nuclear chemist or something, writes a curriculum that your child can read and tell them to go to the refrigerator and get, some ingredients, some red cabbage, and go to the cupboard and get vinegar and put together the science experiment, then kids can do that. So they really teach themselves after 6th grade maybe, they pretty much do it themselves.
So you truly are the educator facilitator.
Yeah. Curriculum provider, disciplinarian, grader, making sure that it's actually happening and that they're not falling totally behind. But that part is a non-fear. Or in our area with classes for high schoolers, if you don't think you could do physics and your child could not do it on their own, you put them in a class on Tuesdays and then they do the rest of the homework at home. So that's not really something to be afraid of anymore, and colleges don't resist us anymore. So.
Your oldest is 29 out of all of the kids represented here. Did colleges look oddly at his transcript coming from the homeschool community?
No. In fact, when I took him on a campus visit, or maybe it was his registration day, I don't know, one of those, before he went to college, they said, now, we like the ACT scores and we like the grades, but really class rank is one of our highest things we look at. And I said, oh my goodness, what do I do? Because he's homeschooled. And they said, oh, we put all homeschoolers in the top 10%. And I said, oh, thank you very much. So that was a long time ago. That was, 99
10 years ago,
like
yeah.
that. So, so then I wasn't worried after that. And different colleges have been a little bit different, but they get really frowned upon if they make homeschoolers jump through groups anymore, because there's just not really any point. If you have, especially if you have an ACT score that's decent, and then, the mom made up all those grades, but.
This is a standardized test.
Yeah, if you want a question that they don't match up or something, like you gave A's and they got a 19 on the ACT, then they have a right to question that.
Right.
So I have had to jump through some hoops for some schools, but not the main ones.
Did any of your college kids apply to out-of-state schools? Did that make a difference going from Missouri homeschool? You said they're very homeschool friendly to applying in a different state?
they just applied at Rolla.
Okay.
Yeah, we applied in some different states and didn't get any.
Right, we didn't have any trouble in that.
I did have one had to take a GED. He didn't have to. I could have produced a document of every textbook he ever used and every book he ever read and all that, and I said, no.
Take the GED.
Back to the qualifications, I mean, when I first decided I'm going to try this, my husband looked at me and went, "Are you sure?" And I said, well, okay, I've already bought the books, but we're going to go to this homeschool conference and we're going to listen to these speakers. And actually the science curriculum that I was talking about that I use is written by a guy named Jay Weil. And he was a college professor. And he found through his years of teaching that he always had a question on his test that was not in the book and he did not teach to. And he said 99 cases out of 100, the homeschool kid would try it. And 99 times out of 100, someone who came from a traditional school would not. He said, no, they may not even get close to the answer. But he said, I could see a difference where these homeschool kids were not spoon-fed. They would reach out and try to figure it out and try to come up with something. And then he went on to these statistics that showed that even a mom who hadn't graduated high school could successfully teach her kid, and her kid could get into college. I mean, he had numbers and graphs and statistics, and we walked out of there. And that was the very first session we did. We walked out, and my husband said, "That's it, you're homeschooling for life."
For life.
Okay, I'm agreeing to 1 year.
Yeah, for 1 year.
So he was sold after hearing that. It was.
We had a similar experience with that, yeah, that the statistics were higher, not for kids overall. And that was my husband's thing, was once he heard that. But he's a math major, so statistics mean a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree.
All right, well, that is all that I have for you three. Is there any closing sentence you want to give? I'll put you on the spot.
Looking back on it, the thing I appreciate most is the high school years, just because I felt like I knew what my kids were doing and what they were going through, and there weren't mystery pouts for entire weekends that, what happened on Friday? I have no idea what happened on Friday, but he's not talking to me, so, that just gave me a lot of peace of mind, I think.
I would agree with that. Because you spend so much time with them when they get those teen years, you can pick up on the warning signs and things that are going on with them pretty quick. And so there's really not the big surprise of, oh my gosh, I can't believe my kid went out and did that. You kind of go, okay, I know they're likely to try this, and then you can kind of work with the things that they sometimes push the boundaries on.
Yeah.
And you can be there as a parent.
It seems like you tend to know their friends and their friends' parents on a more personal level. Which helps, because no one's afraid that if I say, our kids together.
I also found too that sometimes when homeschoolers, mine this happened with, that sometimes people were less likely to do some of the out of bound things. I know when Craig would go over, when he was in his early teens, to some of his friends' house, the parents wouldn't let them watch our movies when he was there, because they sort of assumed homeschoolers are much stricter. So I think sometimes the stereotypes worked in our advantage.
All right, well, thank you all very much for your insight and your words of wisdom.